Okay, so this is the third video I'm doing tonight on Trump's wall speech. This is the Pelosi-Schumer response. Now, I heard it in real time, but I didn't get a lot of time to actually fact check or anything like this. So I'm just going to go through it basically with you. We can watch it, and I'll give my points on it. So I know a little of what's coming, but not the exact specifics. Let's go for it.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak directly to the American people tonight about how we can end this shutdown and meet the needs of the American people. Sadly, much of what we heard from President Trump throughout this senseless shutdown has been full of misinformation and even malice. The president has chosen fear. We want to start with the facts.
Okay, so misinformation, that's fine. We'll hear what they point out. That's no problem. Fear and malice and things like that. I always find this funny. This started back in the DNC and the RNC conventions where there was this narrative going, which, of course, the mainstream media, just being a mouthpiece of the Democratic establishment primarily, were saying Trump is a man based on fear. His convention was all about fear. But the Democrats' convention was all about niceness and hope, just like Obama. So when Trump talks about illegal immigration being a problem or the economy being a problem, violent crime being a problem, things like that, that's all politics of fear. But when the Democrats want to talk about how if we don't change climate change, it'll kill us all, how Trump's literally going to be the next Hitler, how we have to fear that anyone who's even accused of a sexual crime like Kavanaugh must not be allowed to do anything because we're fearful that he could harm women in the future, etc. Though that's not fear somehow. Both sides use fear as a motivator. Both. That's just absolutely true. So I get so tired of this trope that, oh, our opponents are using fear. No matter what side's using that. Yes, you both are. You're both saying, here's things that are bad. But that's the nature of saying, we think there are problems that we need to fix. That, in effect, is using fear. These problems could get worse. So I don't understand why it's always assumed that Trump's this fearmonger, but the Democrats are. Both sides fearmonger about the issues they think are important. It's just that the mainstream media and the mouthpieces say, oh, our fear's good, the other side fear's not. So let's hear what they have to say.
The fact is, on the very first day of this Congress, House Democrats passed Senate Republican legislation to reopen government and fund smart, effective border security solutions. But the president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall.
Okay. So first off, the Democrats did push for the bill, but let's rewind the clock before that. So this is occurring around the time when we just had elections, right? So the Democrats ended up taking over at the beginning of the new year. Right before the Democrats took over, you still had a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate. Now, if you're not really following this, you might say, well, wait a minute. If Trump's a Republican and he had the House and the Senate, why couldn't they just fund the wall? Well, because they would need some of the Democrats' votes in the Senate to get the bill passed. It needed more than just 50 votes. So the Democrats all unanimously would reject. What ended up happening was the House approved a bill that would fund Trump's border wall. The Senate Republicans were willing to vote for that, but Democrats were not willing to come on board. So everything she says about, well, the facts are that the Democrats wanted to keep the government open, no, that's not true. If that was the case, they had the option to vote when the Republican House first passed that bill. They did not. The reason they did not was because they didn't feel that it had everything in it that they wanted. That's the exact reason that the Republicans aren't signing the bill that the Democrats are suggesting or that Trump hasn't signed it. It's the exact same thing. So when Pelosi and Schumer here try to be like, oh, well, we tried to put forth a bill, so it's all Trump's fault, the shutdown's all Trump's fault, that's not true. The Republicans tried to put forth a bill, and you all decided not to sign it as well. Then she talks about how the wall will be expensive. Now, I saw someone do the math on it. Our yearly budget's something like $4 trillion, and the wall's being suggested at $5 billion. So those are huge numbers that are hard to fathom. So let's break it down. Let's assume that we're talking about $40,000, so we'll take that down by a large percentage. The same percentage would be $500 for a person that's making $40,000 a year. That's what $5 billion is out of $4 trillion. And yet they're saying, no, we can't spend that 500. What would be 500? That small of a pittance. I believe it's something like 11 hours of federal budget. We can't spend that on borders. We can't spend it on the wall. It's that expensive. No, it's not that expensive. And they, for example, they're sending $50 billion of foreign aid funding to places that want to increase their security. So why is $5 billion is that seems too much for what we have here? Also, the Democrats, it's funny to hear them talk about how wasteful spending. They spend things all the time. They're always about blowing up the budget. But when it comes to border security, nope, there's where we draw the line. We can't have secure borders. They say that other things are more effectual, but they haven't articulated what. And keep in mind, they've been saying that they're going to solve border security, both the Republicans and Democrats, since Reagan was in office. So it's been, 30 years and they haven't done anything? If all these other texts are so simple and so cheap, then why haven't they done anything? We're talking about 40,000 people a month that are being apprehended at the border. Who knows how many getting through? That's a huge problem. We have anywhere between 11 and 25 million illegals in the country right now. So these are big problems, and $5 billion is a pittance to spend. I haven't seen their solutions that they claim would be able to solve better or what it would cost.
Wall he always promised Mexico would pay for.
I love this trope. Yes, Trump did that and it was stupid. But anyone with half a brain knew that Trump wasn't saying Mexico was going to sign a check and go for the wall, in the memo section. What he was saying was, look, Mexico's going to pay for the wall through these trade deals because we're tired of Mexico exploiting us by allowing these illegal immigrants to come up through. And so we're going to renegotiate a trade deal that isn't as lucrative for them and use that excess money. That would be enough to pay for the wall. Now, yes, as I articulated on my fact check video, that doesn't mean that pool of money exactly from the trade deal would then go into the wall spending on this budget proposal. But he's merely saying that we will make back the money the taxpayers would pay in what Mexico ends up, and the amount we end up making more from Mexico through our new trade deal. But it's funny, that this Mexico claim, they think that's some zinger. Okay, so what? You're willing to shut down the government and not have border security because Trump said Mexico would pay for it, so that's it? So now screw the border and screw people on the shutdown? Doesn't seem very intelligent to me.
The fact is, President Trump has chosen to hold hostage critical services for the health, safety, and well-being of the American people.
So of the Democrats, at the very least, even if you hate Trump, you have to say this. It takes two to tango. I tend to think it's grossly more the Democrats' fault than Trump's fault that the government shut down. But even I'm willing to admit that Trump is somewhat responsible. Here's why. Trump could cave in tomorrow and everything the Dems want, the government would stop the shutdown. Or the Dems could cave in immediately on everything Trump's won, and the government would stop the shutdown. The fact is, both have things they want, and so they're negotiating. So it's both of their faults. Now, I argue that it's actually the Democrats that are far more responsible for this shutdown or to being callous. The reason is, check out my last video from Chris Como, where he's telling you, basically, there's already portions of a wall built. It's portions that the Democrats have funded before. The border agents all say that we need more of that because it would be effective. And Trump's suggestion for a wall at this point, because he's basically tried to negotiate and tried to come towards the Dems, is exactly the same type of wall that's already there. In other words, the Dems have voted for the same type of wall that's already there. But Pelosi's not even just saying that this wall would be ineffectual and expensive. She's actually saying it's immoral. So how is it, if it's the exact same wall, like Como, who's a CNN person, certainly not a Trump fan, he's saying it's the exact same type of wall. Why was the wall that Schumer and Pelosi voted for before to fund moral, but now it's immoral? So it just goes to show that it's Schumer and Pelosi that are really the ones that are saying that what this fight's really about is they don't want to give Trump a win. So they're willing to sacrifice border security and leave people suffering the shutdown because of that.
Hold the paychecks of 800,000 innocent workers across the nation, many of them veterans. He promised to keep government shut down for months or years, no matter whom it hurts. That's just plain wrong.
Again, the Democrats are as responsible, I think more, but at least somewhat responsible. Even if you're a Trump hater, you have to admit that. When Trump's saying that he would keep it shut down for years if necessary, well, that would be to get border security because he thinks border security is that important. Just like apparently the Democrats would keep it shut down that long because they think the wall is immoral. Else they would negotiate, which they're not even going to the negotiating table now. Remember, Trump's offering for them to come in. Trump's made some types of concessions, like how the wall would look, because he heard Democrats say things like, oh, the wall would be bad because ICE agents wouldn't be able to see through the wall. So he's like, okay, we'll make it slats then, like what's already there, like what you already voted for. And still they're not willing to negotiate.
The fact is, we all agree we need to secure our borders while honoring our values. We can build...
I disagree. I think both the establishment Republican and Democrat Party have shown for years the fact that they've allowed illegal immigration to become what it is and haven't secured the border shows they're not really serious about securing the borders. I think the establishment Republicans like the cheap labor it brings their lobbyists, and I think the establishment Democrats like the potential future votes and catering towards the Hispanic community. So I'm not so sure that either, and I'm blaming the establishment Republicans as well, either the established Republicans or the Democrats like Pelosi and Schumer here actually do want border security. They seem to reject everything that's suggested for border security. I mean, what if they want border security? Can someone please ask Nancy Pelosi, why is the wall immoral? What about it's immoral? Now, you already voted for a wall in the past. Like Trump said, you have walls and fences around all of your communities. Why is the fence acceptable but the wall not? To me, the only idea why the wall would be immoral is because it's to keep the other out, which shows that it's somehow racist because we're fearful of the people that we don't want in. Well, if that's the case, then why wouldn't everything she's suggesting about border security also be immoral? See, that's the danger. And keep in mind, who's more responsible? Someone on Trump's side says, I want to negotiate with the Democrats, or someone on their side that are saying, we refuse to give even $1 because this policy is immoral. So they're basically saying, this is an evil person making an evil plan. We're not going to deal with them. So who's more responsible then for the lack of negotiating that's keeping the government shut down? And when you smear people as evil or immoral like that, and it's based on a lie, that's a really terrible thing to do. And that's what's leading to the decline in discourse. Why isn't the media all over this?
The infrastructure and roads at our ports of entry. We can install new technology to scan cars and trucks for drugs coming into our nation. We can hire the personnel we need to facilitate trade and immigration at the border. We can fund more innovation to detect unauthorized crossings.
Then why haven't they advocated tons of money for that in the past or even now? The bill that she's bragging that they pushed forth was $1 billion. Is that enough to do all of this? It seems like not. That seems like a pittance. Why can't we have a barrier and all the things they're suggesting? As Como said, the agents on the wall, the border agents there say we do need more barriers. So just having more people isn't necessarily the only answer. Why can't we do both of these things? They're not making a credible argument. Again, and if these things are all good, isn't the purpose of all these things to secure the border and keep illegals out? So why wouldn't her policies all be immoral as well? And if the wall is immoral, is she going to recommend then going and spending, how many billions are we going to spend to remove the parts of the wall that are already there? Because it's immoral, right? It's just nonsense.
Fact is, the women and children at the border are not a security threat. They are human.
It's not just women and children. In fact, the bulk of them aren't women and children. She knows that to be the case.
Humanitarian challenge, a challenge that President Trump's own cruel and counterproductive policies have only deepened.
It is a humanitarian challenge. And one of the reasons is because these people continue to come because they think they'll be able to get in. Why do they think that? Two reasons. One, because a lot are getting in, as we can see by the tens of millions of illegals that are in the country. And second, because you have left-leaning people saying, yeah, we should let these people in. We're all about the Statue of Liberty. We want migrants. That's what makes our country strong. So they hear those messages and they're like, oh yeah. Plus then you have actual people in America that are facilitating, like driving them in buses, helping send them food, encouraging them to make that trip. So you have all these problems that occur while they're on this trip. Let's say you're a left-leaning person and you really are concerned about these illegals. That's fine. I'm concerned about them as well. But do you understand they're probably not going to get in, and the suffering that most of them go through, something like 1/3 of the women sexually assaulted, people going through human trafficking, people getting sick, people starving, people not having proper water, suffering from exposure. It's a long, arduous journey, only to be said, hey, sorry, you got to go back. Children getting ill, sick, being separated from their families, being taken by human traffickers. That's why we need to have a system which says we are unabashedly telling you you are not going to get in, period. A wall would be a good step to do that, but instead they're making overtures to it's somehow immoral, which lets these people know, we'll continue to come, which leads to the humanitarian crisis she's discussing.
And the fact is, President Trump must stop holding the American people hostage, must stop manufacturing a crisis, and must...
It's not a manufacturing crisis. She just said there's a humanitarian challenge. That shows it's a crisis. In 2015, they said it was a crisis with thousands of unaccompanied minors that were coming. They called that a crisis. So this is a crisis. Just when you look at the human suffering angle of it from the illegal immigrations, that's not to say, she's not even addressing anything Trump said in his speech with all the numbers of all the crimes that are committed by illegals. And that's not even to address the economic stress it puts on, how they are, illegals end up directly competing with minority communities, particularly African-American communities. So yes, it is a crisis. We don't know by an amount of 10 million people how many illegals are in this country. That's a crisis. We have 40,000 people a month being apprehended at the border. Who knows how many people getting through? So I would say it is a crisis. It's not manufactured.
Reopen the government. Thank you. Leader Schumer?
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi.
Chuck has a fantastic scowl, let me say, but...
My fellow Americans, we address you tonight for one reason only. The President of the United States, having failed to get Mexico to pay for his ineffective, unnecessary border wall, and unable to convince the Congress or the American people to foot the bill.
Right, he wasn't able to convince you, Congress, and that which is the American. It's not like he asked the American people to foot the bill. That Congress is supposed to come up with a budget that would foot it. We've already gone through the Mexico stuff.
Has shut down the government. American democracy doesn't work that way. We don't govern by temper tantrum. No president should pound the table and demand he gets his way, or else the government shuts down.
That's funny, Mr. Schumer. I believe you said the exact opposite when Obama shut down the government over health care. Do you remember him saying, this is appalling of Obama to be throwing a temper tantrum and slamming his fist saying he'll shut down the government? I don't recall that at all. Do you? No, he said the exact opposite. See, isn't that funny? And it's the same with these mainstream media mouthpieces. When you had a Democrat president and Republicans in the House, and the and they couldn't reach an agreement and there was a shutdown, everyone blamed the Republicans in the House, or the Republicans in Congress in general. Now, when you have a Republican president and Democrats in the House and they can't reach an agreement and there's a shutdown, everyone blames, oh, not the Congress this time. Now it's the president's fault. Isn't that odd, that double standard? And Schumer here exemplifies it perfectly by saying, oh, it's a temper tantrum when Trump does it. This just goes to show, when it's their pet issue, they think, yes, it was worth shutting down the government. But when it's an issue that they don't think is important, then they're like, no, it's not worth shutting down the government. But that's just a matter of evaluating crisis and standards, making evaluations on things you think is important. Don't act like one person's moral for when they did it and the other person's immoral for when they did it. I'm sick and tired of these double standards.
Hurting millions of Americans who are treated as leverage. Tonight, and throughout this debate and throughout his presidency, President Trump has appealed to fear, not facts.
Okay, let's hear your facts. And you've appealed to fear. How many times have we heard that Trump's Hitler, or Russia, 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 or, Trump's acting, he's attacking the free press, he's going to destroy this country, his finger's on the nuclear button, he's driving us closer to nuclear war. How unethical. He's piling up with strongmen like Kim Jong-un. But no, it's just Trump that's fearful, please.
Division, not unity. Make no mistake, Democrats and the president both want stronger border security.
Okay, we discussed this before. Then why won't they vote for it? Why are they calling can they explain, if that's the case, why they're calling a wall immoral? Now, you might say, if they really want border security, they might, and they're against the wall, they might say, we think the wall costs too much and it won't be effectual. But you have people like Pelosi saying it's immoral. So explain that. And again, this isn't some low-level Democrat saying that. That's the head of the Democrats, basically, Nancy Pelosi. She's shaping the policy in the House. She's saying, no, it's immoral.
However, we sharply disagree with the president about the most effective way to do it. So, how do we untangle this mess? Well, there's an obvious solution. Separate the shutdown from arguments over border security.
That's funny. I don't recall Schumer saying, wait a minute, why don't we separate health care and the shutdown? We'll put health care on the side and end the shutdown, give the Republicans everything they want in Congress, and then we'll negotiate with health care later. Well, Schumer didn't suggest that because he knew the truth. If he did that, he would never get he would lose all of the leverage that him and Obama had on health care. So again, he's operating in a double standard. He's doing the exact opposite things and saying the exact opposite things that he was saying when Obama was president. But, of course, that makes sense because it fits in with the rest of the Democrat pattern. Because they all said in the past, yes, barriers are important, fences are important. They voted for the exact same type of wall that Trump's trying to put up. They said that illegal immigration was something we really needed to focus on, that we should only encourage legal immigration. They've all said this in the past. But now, because it's Trump, they've changed their mind. Again, you can't give one reason. I've yet to hear one compelling reason why, seeing as how now the bollards and the fencing barrier wall that Trump is suggesting is basically the exact same that we already have in some places. He's just asking for more of it. I've yet to see one argument that they've made as to why that's immoral. Why it was what they voted for was moral and a good idea and okay, but now it's somehow bad. The only explanation is it's bad because Trump suggested it. which means they're willing all this when they're saying holding people hostage. It's them that are holding people hostage in the shutdown. It's them that are allowing the border to be insecure because they're more willing. It's more important to them than those things is fighting with Trump.
There is bipartisan legislation supported by Democrats and Republicans to reopen government while allowing debate over border security to continue.
That's exactly what was said in the time of Reagan. They were like, just grant amnesty to these people, allow these illegals to stay, and then afterwards we'll work on border security. How many years has that been? Yeah, exactly. And maybe next century they'll get along to it. Let's just keep separating the funding from congressional budget from border security, and we'll get to it in the next millennia. Don't worry.
There is no excuse for hurting millions of Americans over a policy difference.
Agreed. So why are you doing it? In fact, it's worse than a policy difference. It's because you just don't like Trump.
Federal workers are about to miss a paycheck. Some families can't get a mortgage to buy a new home. Farmers and small businesses won't get loans they desperately need. Most presidents have used Oval Office addresses for noble purposes. This president just used the backdrop of the Oval Office to manufacture a crisis, stoke fear, and divert attention from the turmoil in his administration.
See, this further shows that they're not really concerned about border security because they keep saying it's a manufactured crisis. So they want to have it both ways. On one hand, they're trying to tell people, oh yeah, we want to secure the borders. We realize it's a problem and it's something that we need to do. On the other hand, they're saying this is all manufactured. And now he's saying that Trump talking about this is just to deflect from other issues in his staff and administration. Ridiculous.
My fellow Americans, there is no challenge so great that our nation cannot rise to meet it. We can reopen the government and continue to work through disagreements over policy. We can secure our border without an ineffective, expensive wall. And we can welcome legal immigrants and refugees without compromising safety and security.
How is the wall compromising safety and security? Trump's not saying not to allow in legal immigrants.
The symbol of America should be the Statue of Liberty, not a 30-foot wall. So our suggestion is a simple one. Mr. President, reopen the government and we can work to resolve our differences over border security, but end this shutdown now.
They could do it the opposite way. You can say the exact same thing. Finance the wall now, then we can talk about further border security. But we just want to end the shutdown now. But they can't say that because that's why they're making the argument the wall is immoral. He says that we should do the symbol should be the Statue of Liberty, not the wall. So what's the implication there? The Statue of Liberty says we're welcoming to everyone. That's how everyone always puts it, right? So then how does that mean they're serious about border security? And we already have portions of a wall there, the exact same type that Trump wants to put up. So again, if that's an ugly symbol and shouldn't be a symbol of America, is Schumer recommending we spend money to tear it down? Now, keep in mind what wasn't addressed during this speech, right? They didn't address any of the facts and the numbers that Trump talked about. They didn't address the fact that they voted for this in the past. Never addressed. They didn't address the fact that many wealthy people such as them have gates or walls around their communities and houses. Didn't address any of that. Didn't address that there actually is crime and things like that that come from illegal immigration. They just say that's fear-mongering. None of that was addressed. They just say it's Trump's fault that he had to shut down and we need to stop it. But I think that I've argued successfully, at least in my mind, why it's not just Trump's fault. It takes two to tango. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you did. I'll be doing videos all week. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for listening again and have a good one.